If you like to sew, you've probably heard of Mimi G. It's hard to imagine a more recognizable face and influential entrepreneur in the entire sewing world. So in 2012, Mimi G started a DIY blog, and now she has more than 3 million followers across all her platforms. She started a learning platform to teach people how to sew using her patterns. She opened a fabric store called Melanated Fabrics, and she's now the VP of Design and Brand Management at McCall's. And she just launched Know Me Patterns, giving independent creatives their own pattern lines. Mimi does it all. And it's easy to see why we all love Mimi G. She shares her whole life with us. So when she introduced us to her now husband, Norris Dante Ford, it was easy to be enchanted by the creative energy and the connection that they shared. In episode 70 of the Seamwork Radio podcast, Haley sat down with Mimi G and Norris to hear all the details about how they first met and why sewing is so important to them. We pulled a few of our favorite clips from the interview for this video. If you want to hear the whole episode, you can find it on the Seamwork Radio podcast. Just search for Seamwork Radio in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or your podcast app of choice. And if you're also someone who has a lot of fun making your own clothing and you want to find even more intention and joy, you are definitely in the right place here at Seamwork. So hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you can follow along with us and never miss one of our weekly videos. And now, here are a few highlights from our interview with Mimi G and Norris.
The first thing I want to start with is by establishing some personal history to give your love story some context. So I'm going to go way back first. So it's clear that personal style and creativity are both really important things to both of you. Were you creative and fashion forward as children?
I don't think I was that creative or fashion forward as a kid. I think I definitely did the whole Punky Brewster stage where I wore everything she wore. I looked a hot mess going to school. And my mom totally let me do it. But I don't think I was really into fashion. I remember drawing a lot. I would draw dresses and princess things and, that kind of thing. But I don't think it was honestly really until I was in my 20s that I really started to look at fashion in a different way.
And how did that manifest in your 20s?
I think I started to sort of enjoy putting clothes on, and I have I don't have a specific style. It really just depends on my mood. I'm pretty adventurous. I wear whatever I think looks good. If it's comfortable, even better. I'm not much for wearing things that don't feel good on my body. So I'm not that girl, right? I'm not going to walk around in something that makes me feel uncomfortable. I love my t-shirts, my sweats, and my jeans, which always surprises people because they think that when they run into me in the street that I'm going to be wearing high heels and a dress. And I'm like, not at all, not even close. And I just think I was more adventurous. So I started to play around with moods and what I was feeling and, I started wearing it.
What about you, Norris? Was little baby Norris fashionable and creative?
I have been fashionable and creative, I guess, since the age of 6, because my younger sister and I was living in foster homes. I saw that there was a pattern. There was always a couple or, or adults looking to come adopt kids. So what I did was I just got creative. So I just told my sister, I was like, look, let's pick out 2 or 3 different outfits. Over the course of one visit, we would change clothes 2 or 3 times just to look presentable, to get a family, to get a new home. Eventually it worked. And I thought, little 6-year-old me thought it was because how fresh I was. And so that moment stuck with me because it enabled me to, I guess, take more focus and pay more attention to what I was wearing. And it just kept elevating me. Even through high school, I became best dressed. And then in college, I became one of the most stylish fraternity brothers. And that took a lot of talent because I had to stand out amongst a group of well-dressed gentlemen. So that's kind of how my evolution of fashion became. And just since those moments, it just led me into my next career.
That's a really powerful story. And so the family that you were placed with, did they end up being the people who would, they adopted you and your sister?
Absolutely. Those have been my parents since then. And it wasn't because how well dressed I was. It was just because they were great people. So
That's beautiful. My husband's adopted, and I just think that it's the most special gift in the world. So you kind of touched on this already, but maybe I'm sure you have more stories. Can you guys tell me some stories about a time growing up or in the past where like clothing played a really important or pivotal role for you?
I think when I started sewing, even as a kid, like it might not have been fashion driven or style driven, but it was definitely something that drew me to making my own clothes. And I used to watch my aunt, who was a seamstress when I was little. I used to spend my summers in Puerto Rico, and I would watch her make like bridal gowns and formal wear. And I was just like completely amazed at how she took this fabric and turned it into like such beauty. And so that really piqued my interest in sewing. And I think that is really what drove everything else when it came to like clothes and fashion. And there were two things that I remember very specifically. One was when I first started to teach myself construction, and my dad had bought me a sewing machine, and I was so excited about it. And I had this green dress that I loved. And so I thought, you know what, I'm just going to like trace it and create another version of it, a pattern, which I didn't even know the terminology of what I was doing. So I did. I like traced it out, I sewed it together, but I didn't understand the difference between woven and knit. So after I made it and put it on, I could hardly move. I wore it out. And my dad took me out on the town, and I wore this dress, but I could barely even walk in it. And then I started to sort of learn the difference in fabrics. And then I think the other really important moment in my life was my mom was going to a wedding. She was attending a wedding. I was probably about, I don't know, maybe 12 or 13 years old. I had just started to sew. She needed something to wear. So I was like, hey, mom, let me make you the dress that you're going to wear to this wedding. And she was like, okay. So she took me to I think it was Joann's or Walmart. I don't know. Honestly, I don't even remember what store was open then. And we went and we bought a pattern and we bought fabric. And I took it home and I put together took apart this pattern and made this dress and tried to fit it as best as I could to my mom. And when she tried it on, it was a little tight at the hips. The neckline was really off and the hem was uneven and it was pulling in all the wrong places. And quite honestly, it was a hot mess. But my mom wore it. She wore the dress to the wedding, and every time someone asked her about it, she told them that her daughter had made it. And I think for me, what that was like, I don't know, like a changing moment in my life where I was like, oh my God, I want to dress people. You know, I want to do this. I want to be a fashion designer, which was my initial thought. It just didn't turn out that way. But that was really important in my life, those two moments.
What did the dress look like? I'm just very
It was
curious.
horrendous. It was horrendous. It was a red shift dress and it had a sweetheart neckline. It was like the hem was off and it was like bright red, and it was just, I love my mother for that moment.
Norris, what about you?
As soon as we got adopted, we was going to a whole new school. So my very first day at school, I think it was first grade, I walked in. But anyway, I looked across the room and I saw him, and he had the exact same outfit I had on. Like I guess those kids outfits that has like the shorts on top of the same hanger with the shirt. It was a horizontal stripe, purple and yellow shirt, and then the shorts were I think yellow with like a purple strip at the hem, up underneath the yellow. And I was like, dang it, he got the same exact outfit on. So I'm like, man, this can never happen. I'm never buying a matching set ever again. Well, I think my mom bought it, but I always have to mix it up or do something like that because this cannot happen. After school that same day, I'm talking to my cousin that lived across the street from me, and he was like, "Hey man, might be a guy that might be your same age. He might be in your class. His name Jimmy." As he was saying that, he was coming up the street and he still had the outfit on, and I'm like, "There go that dude that had my outfit on today." So that was a very pivotal moment for me because it just told me to like, what I'm saying, just be even more different because you just never know.
Can you paint a picture of what your life looked like in the moment in time before you met Norris?
Gosh. I was actually living in Nebraska at the time. I was coming back and forth to LA for work. And I was really busy because at the time, I was doing a lot of sponsored content, and I was working with a lot of different brands. And I had gotten in a message from Verizon about doing sort of a contest where a fan would win the chance to hang out with me for the day at this fashion show in Los Angeles. And anybody who knows me knows that I don't really go out. Like I'm a total homebody. I don't like going to the clubs. I don't like going out unless it's a restaurant. I'll go to a restaurant in a minute. And so the idea of I was like, oh, going to an event, having to go to a fashion show, I was like, oh my gosh. Any chance I got to go back to LA, I was like, okay, let's do it. So we had, I was trying to get everything scheduled at the house with the kids and, get the house in order so I could leave. And that month in particular, I had so many events because it was award season. So I had to do like pre-Oscar things, and it was just so many things going on. So I knew I was going to be gone the entire month of February. So it had me a little bit stressed because I had so many things that I needed to get done and photograph, right? Because I was still blogging. So I remember having to photograph like 12 looks in a day so that I would have blog content. It's just a lot going on. So I got to LA, and I got to meet the young lady who had won the contest to hang out with me. And so we had lunch earlier, and then we were headed to this fashion show in a limo. It was all fancy. And I remember, I remember getting to the fashion show, and people were coming over to take pictures and talk with me. So that was a lot of fun. And then Norris and Thrash walked in.
I'm going to ask you the same question, Norris. Can you paint a picture of your life in that moment before you met Mimi?
Thrash and I, we were doing actually like a few different paid gigs at the time. So I was in between gigs with Thrash. And that moment, I mean, that morning, we was downtown at the tailor because we had a lot of different clients that needed stuff to be tailored. And Thrash had this friend, Bosway. He's a designer. He was in the show. He was like, "Hey, my friend got this show. You want to go? It's tonight at 6." So he's like, "All right, cool." So we downtown, and the next thing you know, he get a phone call. He was like, "What?" He was like, "Dang." He's like, "All right, we'll be there soon." So I looked at the time, and he was like, "Man, the show started at 3 o'clock." And he was like, "What?" So at the time, it was like 2:30. So that's no time in LA traffic trying to get all the way up into the hills. So he was like, "You still want to go?" He was like, "Nah, we good." And he was like, "Well, let's see, can we just make it?" So I was like, "Okay." So we got in the car, we drove all the way to my house, and at the time we weren't even dressed to go to the event. We just had on what we had on for the day. So we made it there. As we getting there, people walking out. So we was like, "Man, like you still want to go in?" And we was like, "Man, let's just walk in just see what's up, just show our face." And then we just walk into the fashion show.
Ooh, the suspense is building. Mimi, why don't you tell me from your point of view first the story of meeting?
I will tell you the true story because
Hold
Norris
on.
is going to lie to you.
Should I go
No,
first or should
no,
you go
no, no,
first?
no, no, no.
You've never went first with this story now.
Can I tell you, this is the one question that I hate when people ask us, how did you guys meet? Because I already know that he's about to tell a big fat lie.
No.
And then I'm going to have to correct him. So let me tell you how it went. I was standing there with my friend Tico, who I had actually just met at the time. I met her that same day. And there were some other fans around, and we were photographing, and people were taking pics with me and stuff. And so I look over to the door, and here comes this really tall guy and this not so tall guy. And they looked insane. I was like thinking in my head, like, first of all, what's on their heads? Because if you've ever looked at old pictures of Norris when he had his dreads, it looked like a hat. It was like massive. And Thrash was the same. They had and Norris had made, I don't know, maybe like 8 different prints on. He had floral, paisley, plaid, like all kinds of things were happening. And I was thinking, who are these guys? But the short one's kind of cute. Anyway, so we're standing there, they're over there. People are obviously coming up to them, trying to take pictures. They're getting a lot of attention. And the Verizon lady says to me, "Hey, can you come over and take a picture with the guys. So I walk over and I get in between both of them. We take the picture, right? Everything's going fine. Nora
Okay.
starts to talk to me.
That's it? Is that it?
No. Nora starts to talk to me, and he's a little short, and I had on 6-inch heels. So I leaned in
There we
to
go.
hear him.
There we go. There we go. Okay, that's it. That's it. This is what it is, right? So we walk in. Obviously, we're accustomed to people coming up, taking pictures with us because of our style, our unique style, as she's explained it, right? That part was the truth. I had about 10 prints on. You know, we were doing our thing. And mind you, Thrash is the height of like an NBA player. Like he's super, super tall. So when you see me, it might assume that I'm a little shorter.
Oh,
It's like I'm just average, you know. So I'm like slightly above average. She walks over, people followed her. I was like, oh, you must be popular or something. She looks at me and she looks me in my eyes and says, "You don't know who I am?" And I said, "What?" In my head, I'm like, "Who in the is this Hollywood chick in the Hollywood Hills talking about you don't know who I am?" So we take a picture, and after the picture, she just never left. She stood this close to my face, and I'm saying it must be one or two things. Either she a close talker, or she just really into me. So I was like, you know what? I'm about to test these theories out.
and then when he said that he had an interest in learning to sew, I thought, like, really? Like you want to sew? And he was like, yeah. And so I was like, okay, I'll teach you. And so I did what I think every girlfriend does, when they're like, I'll show you how to make a t-shirt. And so we did. I taught him how to make a t-shirt. And he had been watching me sew for almost a year before he asked about sewing. And he had made a t-shirt, came out really well, and then he's like, I want to do a tutorial. And I was like, trying to be encouraging, I was like, yeah, sure, okay, we'll film a YouTube tutorial on making a t-shirt. And I literally fed him every line because he had just learned, but if you watch, it's a good video. And then I had to leave town to do, I think, Fashion to Profit in Houston. And he was like, I think I'm going to make another t-shirt. And I was like, okay, sounds good. So he calls me, right? FaceTimes me. He's like, babe, like I made a t-shirt, but it's so good. Like it's a really good t-shirt. And I'm like, okay, let me see it. So he shows me the t-shirt and it was really good. It was a really great t-shirt. He was like, yeah, like I think I'm ready for my next project. I'm like, cool. What do you want to do? He's like, I think I want to make a suit. And I was like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
There's a lot of steps from a t-shirt to a suit that we got to cover. But it's just how he is, right? He's like, when he wants to learn something or really enjoy something, he's like full steam ahead. And sewing was just that thing.
How would you say that she enhances your creativity?
She has a high level of talent and also creativity when it comes to just fashion forward because we're almost like the same person. Like if I look at something, we could pretty much both imagine the same thing without even talking about it. So just having someone that you can like you can bounce the same energy off.
He has a really big imagination. He's really creative. He's always thinking of the next thing. And I need that, right? Because I run so many different businesses, my brain is more often than not on the business side of things because I have to. And so the creative part sometimes lacks because I don't get to give it that much attention. And so he's that part of the brain for me, right? He gives me the next idea, or let's do this, or let's film it this way, or let's create this TikTok, or let's do, he's always trying to encourage me and keep me, sort of elevating the game. Because, when you're in the lead, you have to try and stay in the lead. And so for me, I'm always fully aware of that, right? That I need to stay on top. And so he helps me do that.